Welcome to another FPL video. We have some big news, of course, with the double game weeks. Man United and Crystal Palace will be facing each other in game week 20. So we have 4 teams in total with a double game week. We're going to go through those fixtures and talk about how that affects the best team if you're using the wild card. And this team is also very useful for those that are trying to use free transfers, want ideas for transfer plans. Well, this video is the one for you. And it's not just specifically for game week 20. You can check out the best free hit team for game week 20 where I cover that. But it's also beyond and looking in the long term as well. So if you end up enjoying this video, then be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this to over 300, and we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers. That'd be greatly appreciated. But without further ado, let's get straight into this video. The 4 teams that will have a double include Man United now, and that was one that we've been talking about for over a week. Now, our assumption was that it would be Man United versus Leeds, but Leeds actually scored a last-minute equaliser in the FA Cup, and that basically eliminated the chances of them doubling in Game Week 20. But Crystal Palace were knocked out of the FA Cup, and then you've got Man United who progressed, and the fact that they avoided draws means there is no round-3 replay for those teams, and so there was the possibility of fitting Man United versus Crystal Palace on the 18th of January. So that's what's happened. Man United will now face Man City at home and Crystal Palace away. Then you've got Man City who are going to face Man United away and Tottenham at home, and that was already kind of a scheduled double game week, but it was completely confirmed after the 4-0 thrashing of Chelsea. And then Spurs also have a double because they progressed with a 1-0 victory over Portsmouth. They're going to be facing Arsenal in the North London derby at home and Man City away. And the final team that will be doubling, and the least interesting to be fair in terms of FPL, will be Crystal Palace who face Chelsea away and Man United at home. And I probably would avoid all of their assets despite the double. That includes Zaha, Olise, Eze, all of these options. And I'm mainly focusing on the 3 big teams, so to speak, who have a double game week in 20. So let me know your thoughts on the doubles. Which teams are you going to be loading up on? Will you be going for 2 or 3 of each of those clubs? And now let's go back into the best wildcard team for game week 20. In the last 2 game weeks, we went for Kepa Arrizabalaga as the main goalkeeper, and he's still a decent choice, and there's an outside chance of Chelsea doubling in game week 21. But I would go for David De Gea, who has a confirmed double. Man United are a much better place than Chelsea, who are all over it at the moment. They lost 4-0, of course, to Man City, as I talked about earlier, and they've only got 1 win out of the last 7 domestic games. Compare that to Man United, who are unbeaten, actually, for a very long time, I think in the last 8 games, and they've only got 1 loss in the last 16 matches in all competitions. So I would go for David De Gea, and I also like Diogo Dalot. I've talked about him a lot, but since his injury, it's going to be difficult for him to get back into the side with Malacia playing well, Wan-Bissaka, not to mention Luke Shaw, who can play left back and centre back, so he's the best way to cover Man United defensively. But if you want another option and maybe triple up on Man United, I would go for David De Gea in goal. I think that's the best way to go about it, and David De Gea's got 7 points in his last 3 games. He did make that big mistake against Everton in the FA Cup, but I still think he's a decent option nonetheless. With the double, yes, Man City's a tough fixture. I wouldn't expect United to keep a clean sheet there, despite their incredible home record. Since September, they haven't conceded a single league goal at Old Trafford, and I would expect that to change against Man City. But against Crystal Palace, I could see a clean sheet, and also in the long term, there are some pretty good fixtures. Ward speaks for himself, a good backup goalkeeper, despite Leicester going back to their struggling ways. But it's all about the main goalkeeper, and in this case, I've gone for David De Gea. Now in our defensive line, we've got quite an established quartet. It's just about that 5th option, and you could go about it differently. You could go for a cheap one like Bueno instead of someone like John Stones, but White, Shaw, Trippier and Botman, if you've seen our deadline streams and reaction streams, I always recommend those 4 defenders for those that are looking for replacements. In this case, it could be for Cucurella, and despite having a good chance against Crystal Palace of a clean sheet, Chelsea are looking really unstable at this moment in time, so you could maybe move him on to a Bueno or go to a John Stones if you've already got these 4 kind of established defenders already. I would go for Ben White and look to bench him against Tottenham, but in future weeks the games start to get better against Everton and some good long-term fixtures for Arsenal, and Arsenal could also have a double in 23 as well. And Ben White is quite cheap. If you've got Saliba already and have value tied up in him, then you could just go for Saliba, and either one or Gabriel would be the best ways to cover Arsenal defensively. Then we've gone for John Stones, who looks like the most nailed on Man City defender right now, alongside a Akanji Akanji, but I'd probably lean more towards John Stones, who's been in incredible form. He also was rested in the FA Cup, and I think he has the best chance of starting in the double game week across both games and also beyond game week 20. Like in game week 21, for example, when Man City host Wolves, you would say Man City have a great chance of a clean sheet there. Then we've gone for Luke Shaw, who's got the double in game week 20. He's got 32 points in his last 3 games since returning from the World Cup. Absolutely sensational stuff. I never expected it to be fair, but I have him, and he's been one of the main differences for me in terms of almost gaining 1 million in rank since game week 17, and I think he's one of the very best defender options in the game at this moment in time. To conclude the defence, we've gone for 2 Newcastle defenders. Kieran Trippier speaks for himself. You know how good he is. He is by far the best defender in the game, although the likes of Luke Shaw is definitely giving him a run for his money in the second half of the season, so I would definitely go for him. And if you want to make a difference in terms of Newcastle assets, I'd go for a defensive double up and either go for Nick Pope in goal or Botman, and in this case, I would go for Botman. I still can't believe he's only 4.4 million. That is absolutely insane value. Newcastle have one of the very best defences in the country. At this moment in time, you could argue they have the very best, and at that price and below, you're not going to find anyone better, and I would rather spend 0.5 million more on Botman than go for a Bueno or maybe a Patterson, Nico Williams, whoever it may be. Of course, Patterson is injured anyway, but I would go for Botman, and despite the likes of Doherty maybe being appealing, and you could maybe consider him as well with the double in mind, I just go for Botman and this defensive structure, and you're covering multiple of the top teams in the country, especially when you're considering form. You could argue Arsenal, Man City, United and Newcastle are the 4 best teams right now, and you've got a piece of each of their defences, and in the case of Man United and Newcastle, you've got defensive double-ups that could prove very handy. We have also made several changes to the midfield, and Odegaard is in here. I think he's a slightly better option than Martinelli, and it's really close between them. You could go for either one, and I think you do just fine. Of course, you might have a lot of value tied up in Martinelli like I do, so it makes it very difficult to go away from him to Odegaard, and in that case, I'd probably keep. But if you don't have that much value tied up in Martinelli, I think it possibly is worth a switch, but it's almost 50-50, and like I said, either one would be just fine for you. Those 2, Rashford and Almiron, offer the best value in midfield, and I would definitely go for at least 3 of those 4. De Bruyne is in here, and I have to say it's very close for me between him and the informed Mahrez, who scored a brace against Chelsea, including a fantastic free kick, and he's also got points in his last 3 Premier League games with assists and goals, and I think Mahrez is the informed Man City player, so you could consider him actually over De Bruyne, or if you're not going for John Stones in defence, you could have De Bruyne and also Riyad Mahrez instead of someone like Odegaard for the time being, because you could feasibly bench Odegaard in the North London derby. So that's something for you to think about. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Would you rather triple up with City with John Stones being dropped and having a triple up in attack with Haaland, De Bruyne and Mahrez, or would you go for Mahrez over De Bruyne? What would you do? Or maybe just stick with 2 Man City players and kind of avoid the pep roulette risk, which is always there, to be fair. Then we've gone for Rashford. He speaks for himself. Another one that since the restart has been absolutely incredible, and he also topped it up with a man of the match performance against Everton in the FA Cup, scoring a last minute penalty in essence. So I think Rashford speaks for himself, and he's one of the very best options in the game right now. And with the double he's got as well against Crystal Palace, that makes him a feasible option even in game week 20, where we might have considered benching him. Well, now that's no longer the case. Then we've gone for a budget option here in Mitoma. If you've got the funds, then I would go for him over Andreas Pereira, but if you don't, just go for Andreas and keep it like that. Another option to consider would be McAllister, who's 5.4 million. He's got low ownership and some good long-term fixtures. The reason why I say this is because the Zerbi has spoken about this extensively. He said that McAllister was mainly there in the Brighton team to help in the build-up, but now he might play in a more advanced position. He scored twice off the bench against Middlesbrough in the FA Cup, and McAllister has done very well for Argentina in the World Cup, playing in a more advanced role as well as the Lo Celso replacement. So I think McAllister could be a genuine FPL option, not to mention Solly Marsh, who some people are talking about on top of Mitoma. So Brighton have so many midfield options, and that's not including Trossard, who looks like he's going to be benched for quite a while at this moment in time. So I'd go for Mitoma if you want a cheap midfielder, but if you need the funds and you can't afford this team, then you could possibly downgrade Mitoma. And the last midfielder would be Almiron, who offers extremely good value. He has blanked a few times in a row, and I don't think he'll reach the same heights as he did in the first half of the season. I talked about this in Game Week 17 as well, but I still think he'll do well enough to justify that price tag, offer that great value, and also you can alternate him from time to time, bench him on certain occasions, and he could also do the job for you when he's called upon, whether he's coming off the bench or you decide to start him in specific game weeks. The front three is the same as the best free hit team video, so not much has changed on that front. Just keep an eye on Ivan Toney. So apparently he's progressing well in terms of his injury. Let's keep an eye out for that one. But not just that, let's see the results and the repercussions of the betting charges. He did have a hearing recently, I believe on the 4th of January, and we haven't found out about any punishment just yet at the time of this recording. But keep an eye out for that as well. If he's cleared on both fronts in terms of injury and also in terms of suspensions, then I would go for Ivan Toney. He's got some fantastic fixtures, including the likes of Bournemouth at home, Leeds and Southampton, and even in those difficult fixtures against Arsenal, Toney can do the business as well. And Brentford have been very good since the restart, one of the best teams in the country. So I would go for Ivan Toney, and he's done it against absolutely everybody, including Spurs, Man City, and he can do it as well against the lesser teams too. Then we've gone for Haaland and Harry Kane. Both of them have double game weeks. Both of them are viable captaincy options. I talked about the possibility of going for Kane over Haaland as captain, and I think he can do just as well, if not more. I still think that. My main concern with Kane, and it was the case with Mitrovic in Game Week 19, is the yellow card suspension risk. If Harry Kane picks up a yellow card in the North London derby against Arsenal, he'll miss the second game against Man City, and that really puts me off, and that's why Haaland could just be the safe option. Just don't think about it too much, and you could also put the triple captaincy armband on him. But I want to discuss something before we go to FPL.team about Erling Haaland and Man City's possible doubles in the future, so you can decide if you want to put the triple captaincy armband on Haaland this time round. I still think Kane's worth it, by the way, if you want to go for a triple captain, but he's also very risky because of the 5 yellow cards. If he gets one more, he's suspended for the second game, and that could be enough to put all of us off, including myself, and I've been a big advocate for Harry Kane as a captaincy option. But let's now talk about the possible doubles for Man City in the future. As we talked about earlier, Man City will double in Game Week 20 against Man United away and Tottenham at home. But compare that double to these possible ones in the future. Now, Ben Crellin isn't saying these will definitely happen. He's highlighting all the possibilities depending on other circumstances and other competitions, including the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and how things could be rescheduled in a certain way. So, in Game Week 23, Man City will face Aston Villa and Arsenal away. Obviously, the Aston Villa game will be at home. Then the possible future double game weeks, of course, the Game Week 23 one is pretty much set in stone, but the future ones include Game Week 29, where Man City could face Liverpool at home and either Bournemouth away or West Ham at home. Then you've got Game Weeks 34 and 37, which look like the best possible double game weeks on paper. So Man City could face Fulham away and either Bournemouth away, West Ham at home, or Brighton away in Game Week 34. That looks like a really enticing double. And even Game Week 37, if Chelsea continue to struggle, Man City versus Chelsea at home and either Bournemouth away, West Ham at home, or Brighton away. As he talks about here, Bournemouth versus Man City will be postponed if Man City reach the Carabao Cup final, which is definitely possible. But look at the other two scenarios, which are even more likely. Man City versus West Ham will be postponed if either club reaches the FA Cup quarterfinals. Now, Man City could face Arsenal in the next round of the FA Cup or Oxford, depending on the result today. But Man City still have a great chance of reaching that stage of the competition, so that game could well likely be postponed, and that will form a double, as discussed by Ben Crellin in either Game Week 29, 34, or 37. The last possibility is Brighton versus Man City. That will be postponed if either club reaches the FA Cup semi-finals, which, to be fair, once again, could still be very likely. Let's just see how the draws go out and if Man City can defeat either Arsenal or Oxford in the next round of the FA Cup. So those are the possible doubles in the future. Game Week 34, 37 look really enticing as a double game week, and if Man City are still in a title race and it's going down to the wire, then you wouldn't expect rotation in either Game Week 34 or 37, even with the Champions League, the FA Cup and Carabao Cup, all around that period, especially the FA Cup and Champions League. Carabao might have been done by that stage already. So let's talk now about FPL.team, using that website, how this Game Week 20 wildcard team would line up, and talk about the captaincy. And let me know your thoughts. Will you be triple captaining Haaland now in Game Week 20, or will you be saving it for a possible double later in the future that could be even more enticing? There'll be no surprises here. So David De Gea will start in goal with Danny Ward on the bench. And we've gone for a back four of Kieran Trippier, John Stones, Luke Shaw. And we've also gone for Botman. So a double up in Newcastle defensively and 2 double game week defenders in Shaw and Stones. You could consider Perisic, maybe Dyer, or one of these defenders like Doherty more importantly. But beyond Game Week 20, I just don't see a great chance of clean sheets compared to these 4 teams and these 4 defenders who play in better teams and defenses in my opinion. So I would go for these 4. You've also got Ben White as your 5th defender. And of course, it's completely up to you. I don't think Doherty is a bad option at the moment, and he's actually nailed right now. Let's see if that continues in the long term. Then we've gone for a midfield three of Rashford, Almiron and De Bruyne, and a front three of Tony, Harry Kane and Haaland, with a really difficult captaincy decision in my opinion. But I think the yellow card suspension risk sways me towards Erling Haaland, just to avoid any doubts. And also Haaland has done incredibly well against Man United in the past with a hat-trick and also a couple of assists. So that will be the starting 11. You've also got Odegaard first sub, Mitoma and Ben White. I think Mitoma could do really well against Liverpool, but who would you replace him with in this starting 11? Maybe a Newcastle defender? That could be on the cards as well. But you've got a lot of squad depth with this team, and you've also got a really good foundation for the long term, not just for Game Week 20. So let me know your thoughts on this team down in the comment section below. The captaincy, the triple captaincy, and all of that. I am considering using the triple captaincy on Erling Haaland this week, even Harry Kane. But like I said, the yellow card suspension risk sways me more towards Erling Haaland, just to avoid the risk and not have a repeat of Mitrovic from Game Week 19. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and let's also push on towards 20,000 subscribers. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you can also follow us on Patreon, patreon.com/DylanRCM. And you can also become a channel member, so check the links in the description below. There's also the Discord server and the FPL League. So today we've covered the double game weeks for Man United, Crystal Palace, Man City and Spurs, and also the best wildcard team, which can help you even if you're not using the wildcard, which I'd recommend saving for another game week later down the line. We're going to have more doubles, more blanks that we need to navigate with our free hits, free transfers, wildcards, and many other chips, including the bench boost. So I would definitely recommend holding on if you can, but this can also help you with your free transfers, or if you want to take hits and be aggressive and bring in the best players for Game Week 20 and also beyond. So thank you very much for watching this video. It's always a pleasure. I'll see you very soon and take care. I wish you all the very best for this FPL season.